Alexis Mayu, and today my audience is my stepmother, Kimberly Mayu. And today I'm going to be talking about why the death penalty should be abolished. So in 2020, there have already been 5 executions, and there are 12 more scheduled for this year already. The death penalty, in my opinion, should be an abolished practice. It violates the constitutional ban on cruel and unusual punishment, and it goes against human rights, which is a pillar that our country was founded on. It's also economically unsound, and there's always a risk of executing someone that is innocent. So according to ACLU.org, in 1972, the Supreme Court declared that under then existing laws that the imposition and carrying out of the death penalty constitutes cruel and unusual punishment in violation of the 8th and 14th Amendments. But then in 1976, the Supreme Court ran away from abolition, holding that the punishment of death does not invariably violate the Constitution. The court ruled that the new death penalty statutes contained objective standards to guide, regularize, and make rationally reviewable the process of imposing the death penalty. Capital punishment is cruel and unusual again. It's cruel because it's a relic of the earliest days of penology, when slavery, branding, and other corporal punishments were commonplace. Like those barbaric practices, executions have no place in civilized society today. It's also very unusual because the United States, out of all Western industrialized nations, are the only one who practice this, and it's very random selection of who we pick to receive the death penalty. So I ask, who are we to decide whether criminals live or die even though they've committed heinous crimes? They're still technically an American citizen whose rights deserve to be protected. So the death penalty is very economically unsound. States waste millions of taxpayer dollars each year for death penalty verdicts. It requires a very expensive second trial, witnesses, and long jury selections, and death row also requires extra security and maintenance costs. According to Death Penalty Information Center, a research organization that opposes capital punishment, keeping inmates on death row in Florida costs taxpayers $51 million more a year than holding them with life without parole. North Carolina has put 43 people to death since 1976, and $2.16 million were used per execution. By abolishing the death penalty, millions of Americans would be saving more in their taxes each year. The death penalty is a waste of hardworking Americans' money and has no benefits to our economy. Also, at least 4.1% of all defendants sentenced to death in the U.S. in the modern era are innocent, according to the first major study to attempt to calculate how often states get it wrong in their wielding of the ultimate punishment. Over the years, technology has advanced, as well as research and DNA testing. Due to this, there have been a number of death row inmates who have been exonerated due to new testing and evidence that proves their innocence. After researching on Death Penalty Information Center, I found Johnny Ross, a black 16-year-old who was convicted and sentenced to death for the rape of a white woman. Ross confessed after being beaten by white police officers, and his trial only lasted a few hours. Investigations by the Southern Poverty Law Center sought a new trial for Ross and presented evidence that Ross's blood type was not the same as the type in the semen found in the victim. When presented the evidence at his new, I lost my place. So when new evidence was presented to the New Orleans District Attorney Office, they released Ross. So this is just one example of how DNA testing has been able to help innocent men go free. So my counter argument: some people view the death penalty as a deterrent for people committing crimes. The argument often cited in support of capital punishment is that the threat of execution influences criminal behavior more effectively than imprisonment does. The latest issue of the Journal of Criminal Law and Criminology contains a study by a sociology professor and a graduate student at the University of Colorado, examining the options of leading criminology experts on the deterrence effects of the death penalty. So basically, the study was, they were asking criminal investigators, people who have been doing these for 20 years, what they honestly thought was a better deterrent, the death penalty or imprisonment for life. So the results reveal that most experts do not believe that the death penalty or carrying out the execution serve as a deterrent to murder, nor do they believe that existing empirical research support the deterrence theory. In fact, the authors report that 88.2% of respondents do not think that the death penalty deters murder, a level of consensus comparable to the agreement among scientists regarding global climate change. A state that practiced death penalty does not always show a consistently lower rate of criminal homicide. In fact, between 2000 and 2010, the murder rate in states with capital punishment was 25 to 40% higher than states without the death penalty, according to Amnesty International. So millions of Americans, millions of people each year commit heinous crimes. Some get caught, some do not. For those that we catch, they do deserve to be punished, and they deserve to be sentenced however many years that fit their crime. In my opinion, imprisonment for all time is much worse than death. Death is quick, and they don't have time to be rehabilitated. They don't have time to think about the actions that led them to imprisonment. So I do believe that the death penalty should be abolished practice, and I hope that someday we can officially deem the practice unconstitutional and never allow it to happen again. And that is why I think that the death penalty should be abolished. Thank you.